Well, first of all, obviously he's not going to concede when at least 600,000 ballots are in question. We have a right. I mean, here's what I can say about this evidence. This evidence is overpowering in that it suggests we need a very, very detailed hearing. We have to find out exactly how many ballots are implicated, how many ballots were not inspected. The estimates I have so far, but we haven't finished this investigation, is there was about 150 to 200,000 ballots here and about 300,000 ballots in Pittsburgh. It may be more, it may be less. Now, that's very serious because the margin of victory after being behind by 800,000 was only about 40,000. And it's a little odd that every vote from Tuesday on was all for the one candidate. There's also a very strange thing that happened, which will be part of our case. At some point during the process, when the lead of President Trump reduced from something like 50,000 to 30,000, at the time it was at 50,000, 94% of the vote had been cast. And when we got to 30,000, it was only 90% of the vote cast. Now, I can get experts to tell you how that happens. That happens because, think about it, you increase the denominator. What do you increase the denominator with? New ballots. Nobody was informed of new ballots, unless people were writing them up. This will be a very, very strong case. And I know you won't accept it because of your hateful biases, but let's see if you can try thinking rationally. Who was it called by? Oh my goodness, all the networks. Wow. All the networks. We have to forget about the law. Judges don't count. All the networks thought Biden was going to win by 10%. Gee, what happened? Come on, don't be ridiculous. Networks don't get to decide elections. Courts do. Of course, courts set aside elections when they're illegal. In this particular case, I don't know if there's enough evidence to set aside the entire election. Certainly not around the country, maybe in Pennsylvania. However, there certainly is enough evidence to disqualify a certain number of ballots. The ballots that were not properly inspected should be thrown out. And that number of ballots should be taken out of the count. That could affect the election. It's not my job to determine if the ballots are right or not. It's their job. But with a mail-in ballot or an absentee ballot, the burden under law is on the party that's proposing it, which is why it has to be inspected. It's not my, how can I possibly tell you there's fraud or no fraud? The way they conducted themselves, because it looks, I can't tell you exactly what's on the ballot. They conducted themselves in a way that suggests that there was fraud. One of the things that does involve fraud is not making it possible for the people who are supposed to inspect. That's a fraud. That's a fraud on the voters. The voters expect that their inspectors are going to be able to inspect. The voters were defrauded of that right. We will not know if those 600,000 ballots were valid, invalid, or not. Having conducted themselves that way, they certainly present a very strong circumstantial case that the ballots were tampered with. Also, the highly unusual, almost mathematically impossible reduction in the vote in that period of time also raises the question that the ballots were tampered with. So they've done everything they can to yell out to you we were tampering with the ballots without being stupid enough to show it to you. They kept our inspectors away. They kept our inspectors away uniformly. I don't think we're going to find a single Republican that ever got to look at one of those ballots when the law requires that we are allowed to look at them. They did it here, and they did it in Pittsburgh. That can't be a coincidence. How do they figure out in Pittsburgh they should do the same thing that happened here? And they didn't do it in other places. When you say that there's no evidence, the people standing behind me are called witnesses. They will eventually, soon hopefully, appear in court and give this testimony because we're going to file a federal lawsuit that will cover here and Pittsburgh. And we will have as many witnesses as the court needs. Right now, it could be as many as 90 witnesses. That's called evidence that there was a uniform deprivation of the right to inspect, which constitutes a fraud on the people of Pennsylvania, constitutes a fraud on all legitimate voters. Any illegitimate vote cancels a legitimate vote. And the burden of proof as to whether it's a legitimate ballot or not, when it's a mail-in ballot, is on the person proposing the ballot, because there's no other way to justify it. Well, they made it impossible to view those ballots, and there can be only one conclusion as to why you would make it so impossible. Because many, many of them were fraudulent. And you just don't lose leads like that without corruption. And you're in a city in which voter fraud is professional. It's not just amateur. Some places may be amateurs at voter fraud. Philadephia is a professional place for voter fraud because you have a decrepit Democrat machine that you have had in power for 60 years. And it's the reason why you have voter fraud. It's the reason why you have so much crime. It's the reason why you're leading the country in some categories of crime. Because these people are not helping the people of Philadelphia. Their loyalty is to the Democrat Party.